reclaim my time. How many generals and admirals have you fired?
I don't know the exact number. But
you don't know the number. It's 8. Can you explain why any of them were fired? Like, just explain why was the Army JAG fired? Why did you fire him?
They all serve at the pleasure of the president. And I think
no, I'm just asking you why.
General Kane is a great example.
I'm just asking you why.
That we need.
You probably learned at Princeton what why means. Why did you fire him?
They serve at the pleasure of the president, and we want better representation in each and every of those.
You can't explain why you fired any of them?
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Voters' Viewpoint. And today, we've got something that is genuinely must-see television. Congressman Seth Moulton, Marine captain, for combat tours. The man General Petraeus personally called back for a 4th deployment, sat down across from Pete Hegseth, and did what nobody in that administration seems capable of doing, told the truth. We're talking classified intel on a signal chat. 8 fired generals Hegseth can't explain, and a billion-dollar military operation with 0 results all unraveling in real time. If you've been paying attention to what's happening at the Pentagon, this one is going to hit hard. Make sure you're subscribed to the Voters' Viewpoint so you never miss a moment when accountability actually shows up. Now, let's get into it.
Secretary Hegseth, I'd like to clarify a few important details for the record. When you texted the launch time for F-18s going into combat over enemy territory facing anti-aircraft missiles on an unclassified signal chat, did that launch time come from Central Command, yes or no?
I know what you're referring to, and there were no
it's a very simple question. Did it come from? It's a very simple question. Did it come from Central Command?
Well, in this committee, no way in which I communicate or what I communicate on a successful strike is something that I would share.
So you can't even identify the combatant command under which this operation occurred?
Well, everybody knows the combatant.
Okay, so everyone knows this Central Command. So when Central Command sent you this information, did they send it on a classified system or an unclassified system?
Well, as you know, having served yourself, any way that the Secretary of Defense communicates or provides information in and of itself is classified and not to be discussed.
So what was the classification marking of the launch time when it was sent to you? Because DoD regulations require information on classified systems to be marked.
What was the classification mark time?
Yeah. What was the classification marking?
Because again, classifications of any information in an ongoing operation that was successful are not things that would be disclosed in a public forum.
You can very well disclose whether or not it was classified. It's not classified to disclose whether or not it was classified. And in fact, DoD regulations state that any classified information has to be labeled with its classification. Was it classified secret or top secret?
What's not classified is that it was an incredibly successful mission against the Houthis.
Okay, so it was classified. So are you trying to say that the information was unclassified?
I'm not trying to say anything.
That's what I thought. You're not saying that. So you took classified information from Central Command that had a classification marking on it, because that's what's required by DoD regulations, and you put it on an unclassified system. So we're going to get a report in a few days from the DoD Inspector General. And if the DoD Inspector General finds what is pretty obvious, both to you smiling there in the witness seat and to all of us up here, that the information was, in fact, classified, do you plan to take any accountability for that?
As I pointed out at the time...
you said that accountability is back. Does that not apply to you?
As I said at the time, Congressman, there were no names, targets, locations, units, routes, sources, methods, no classified information.
Okay, so if it comes back that it is classified, will you take accountability or not? You've already admitted that it was classified because everything you get from CENTCOM is classified. You just explained that to me. That's how you justified not answering the question.
Not what I said. I didn't confirm any classification or clarification.
Okay, so if it is
what
confirmed,
I know is that
will you take
everything
accountability?
I share, everything I talk about,
Mr. Secretary, does accountability apply to you or not?
Is classified whether I talk or not.
Does it apply to you or not?
Does what apply to me?
Accountability. You said accountability is back at the Secretary.
And you know what? The Houthis were held accountable for shooting at our ships.
I'm just asking if it applies to you.
Very successfully.
I'm not asking about the Houthis.
The previous administration let our ships get shot at, and nothing was done about it. And thankfully, because of the skill and courage of our troops on the battlefield,
asking about
we actually put them in a place where they called for a ceasefire.
I reclaim my time. I'm just asking if accountability applies to you. It's a very simple question. We use leadership by example. Of course.
Unlike, I serve at the pleasure of the president like everybody else does.
So it only applies to the president, not to you?
I serve at the pleasure.
You talked about the success of the Houthi operation. About how much money did it cost? How much money did you spend on missiles shooting at the Houthis?
Well, you'd have to compare that with what it cost.
I'm just asking how much did it cost?
Divert our shipping lanes around.
I'm told it's several $100 million, maybe close to $1 billion. How many U.S. flagged commercial ships have transited the Red Sea since your so-called successful operation?
Well, thankfully, unlike the previous administration,
the answer is zero.
Military vessels transit.
No. I didn't ask about military vessels. I
which
asked
would
about
be the
commercial
precursor
vessels.
for
how many commercial vessels?
Transit.
It's been several weeks. How many commercial vessels, U.S. flagged, have transited
the
the Red
Sea? Well, would you, Mr. Congressman, put civilian ships?
The questions are not to me,
military
Mr. Secretary.
Ships?
They're to you.
We have responsibly put military.
The answer
ships
is zero.
First.
I reclaim my time. How many generals and admirals have you fired?
I don't know the exact number. But
you don't know the number. It's 8. Can you explain why any of them were fired? Like, just explain why was the Army JAG fired? Why did you fire him?
They all serve at the pleasure of the president. And I think
no, I'm just asking you why.
General Kane is a great example.
I'm just asking you why.
That we need
you probably learned at Princeton what why means. Why did you fire him?
They serve at the pleasure of the president, and we
why
want better representation in each and every of those.
You can't explain why you fired any of them?
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott.
Let's be very clear about what just happened in that hearing room, because it deserves to be unpacked layer by layer, because every single layer reveals something deeply alarming about the state of civilian leadership over the United States military. Seth Moulton didn't walk into that hearing to score political points. He walked in as someone who has actually done the job. For combat tours, led the 1st Platoon into Baghdad, voluntarily returned at the personal request of General David Petraeus, one of the most decorated military commanders of the modern era. When Moulton speaks about operational security, about classification protocols, about what it means to send service members into hostile airspace, he is not reading from a briefing memo. He lived it. He bled for it. And that is exactly why Pete Hegseth had absolutely nowhere to hide. Let's start with the signal chat, because this is not a minor procedural violation. This is not a clerical error. This is the Secretary of Defense texting the launch times of F-18's aircraft flying into active enemy territory, facing anti-aircraft missiles on an unsecured, unclassified platform. The Inspector General confirmed it. The original document was marked secret. Hegseth's messages matched it almost perfectly, and his response, under oath, circular, evasive, and ultimately self-incriminating. He tried to claim he couldn't discuss whether the information was classified while simultaneously using the classification of CENTCOM communications as a shield against answering any direct question. Moulton caught it immediately and said out loud what everyone in that room already knew. It is not classified to disclose whether something is classified. That is the law. That is DoD regulation. And Hegseth had no answer, because there is no answer. He got caught. Now, here's what makes this so infuriating. If any enlisted service member, any sergeant, any corporal, any junior officer had done exactly what Pete Hegseth did, they would be facing a court-martial. They would be looking at a dishonorable discharge. Their career would be over, their benefits potentially stripped, and their name attached to a federal criminal record. That is the two-tier justice system that Republicans love to scream about whenever it benefits them and then completely ignore the moment it applies to their own people. Hegseth preaches accountability from that witness seat while actively refusing to apply a single syllable of it to himself. When Moulton asked directly, "Does accountability apply to you?" Hegseth's answer was essentially, "I serve at the pleasure of the president." Translation: no. Accountability stops at the Oval Office door. Everyone below is expendable. Everyone above is untouchable. That is not military leadership. That is a protection racket. Then there's the Red Sea operation, and this one needs to sit with people for a moment. Hegseth and the administration have been loudly, repeatedly, obnoxiously bragging about this operation as a triumph, a success, proof that this administration is tough where the last one was weak. Pete Hegseth has practically done a victory lap on every conservative media outlet that would have him. And what did Seth Moulton reveal when he asked the most basic, obvious follow-up question? The United States spent somewhere between several hundred million and close to $1 billion in missiles, and exactly 0 U.S. flag commercial ships have transited the Red Sea since not one. The shipping lanes are not open. The Houthis are not neutralized. The objective of the operation, protecting commercial shipping, was not achieved. By any rational military standard, that is not a success. That is an extraordinarily expensive known result. And the fact that Hegseth sat there and tried to pivot to military vessels, as if the entire point of the operation wasn't to restore commercial shipping, tells you everything about how this administration relates to facts. They do not care what actually happened. They care about the story. They care about the clip. They care about looking tough on television. The actual strategic outcome is an afterthought. But perhaps the most chilling moment in that entire exchange, and there were several to choose from, was the general's 8 senior generals and flag officers fired. 8, Hegseth couldn't name a single professional justification for a single one of those firings. Not one. The Army Chief of Staff, Randy George, pushed out with more than a year left in his term. The Army JAG, multiple Joint Chiefs. Commanders with decades of institutional knowledge, international relationships, crisis management experience, gone. And when Moulton pressed Hegseth to explain why, just explain why. Even one, the answer was, they serve at the pleasure of the president. That's it. No strategic rationale, no performance standard, no documented cause. Just political loyalty as the sole criterion for leading the world's most powerful military. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue at its core. This is a national security catastrophe, dressed up in MAGA talking points. The cumulative effect of removing that many senior leaders across multiple services and multiple Joint Chiefs is not just administrative disruption. It is the deliberate erosion of institutional memory. These generals have relationships with allied commanders, with adversary-facing intelligence assets, with crisis management infrastructure built over careers spanning multiple decades. You cannot Google that back. You cannot replace it with a Fox News contributor in a uniform. And we are doing this, actively hollowing out our senior military leadership while conducting active operations against Iran. While American pilots are going down over hostile territory, while the global security environment is as volatile as it has been in a generation. The timing alone should terrify every single person in this country, regardless of how they voted. The willingness to ask hard questions and demand real answers because lives literally depend on getting it right. That is what we owe our service members. That is the standard the Secretary of Defense should be held to. And by every measure of that standard, Pete Hegseth failed publicly, completely, and on the record. Our troops deserve better. Our generals deserve better. Our country deserves better than a defense secretary who treats the Pentagon like a political purge machine and a billion-dollar military operation like a press release. If this video fired you up, and it should have hit that like button, share this with everyone you know who still believes accountability matters. And subscribe to the Voters' Viewpoint, because we are not going to stop calling this out until the people in power are held to the same standard as the people they send into harm's way.